Hi, and welcome to Karate Over Coffee. My name is Cheyne McMahon, and I'm your host. This is a podcast dedicated to my experiences in karate. I started karate as soon as I could walk. My parents owned a full-time dojo, so I literally grew up in the dojo as our house was on top. I've lived and breathed karate my whole life, and I've trained with some really amazing sensei, competed for my country, and I've learned so much about the evolution and history of karate. And I'm here to share my experiences and learn. Enjoy.
Some of the kids in the neighborhood, but it wasn't terribly serious. There wasn't really any adults.
Was there friction between Miyagi and Kyoto?
I think they were more, this is only my personal opinion because Kanzaki sensei never directly commented. But I think just like I really thought they were like brothers. And like two brothers, they can be rivals, right?
Yeah. Because Kyoto wasn't a fan of the name Goju.
He hated the name Goju.
Yeah.
Because he kind of subsumed everything under the teachings of Higo Kandyo, right? So he had nothing but respect and admiration for him. Not saying Miyagi Sensei did not, but Kyoto kind of took umbrage to like the name Goju, that it didn't really reflect their teacher, right?
His name, yeah. To'on is Hiwana's name, right?
Yeah, it's the first two characters, right? So the East and the On, right? So To'on, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why he didn't call it To'onna. Maybe he didn't like 3 syllables in the To'onna.
Who knows?
Who knows? But he settled on To'on, right? My own personal theory is To'on Ryu is actually a reflection of 2 teachers. Right, because Kyoto learned from Higo Kandyo, right?
Yeah.
But prior to entering that dojo, he learned from his cousin, Higo Kanyu.
Kanyu, yeah. Okay.
Kanyu, right? And that's why, like, we have in Toan, they don't do the Goju Seisan, they do the Kanyu Seisan, right?
Yep. Okay.
It's similar in some respects, but it's different in others, right? Just like every other Seisan on Okinawa.
Yeah, there's no, luckily, mate, there's no ego in karate, so.
No, it's all that. So when people say To'on, like, I'm like, yeah, like I kind of, maybe not overtly, but I think sort of maybe even unconsciously, that Kyoto was kind of reflecting both of those teachers, like his first 2 teachers. So, but as for him passing it on, as far as I know, like he just kind of concentrated on teaching his son Juko, and then Kanzaki sensei showed up in like 50, I'm going to say 52 or 53, on the recommendation of an Okinawan guy who had actually studied with Kyoto while he was still a student out on Okinawa. And yeah, then Kanzaki showed up, and then he started learning with Kyoto and Juko sensei, and then slowly like a few other people trickled in, but it was always like a handful, like maybe a half dozen tops throughout the years.
Okay. What so having sort of experienced both, what made you stay with To'on?
What made me stick with it? The bottom line is that it was the teacher. I just was so impressed with Kanzaki sensei. Just not as like, he was way past his prime, because he was like, how old would he be? He would have been like
32,
71. Yeah, no, like 71 maybe.
Yeah.
But you could still see that flame in his eyes, right? And he just represented a link to the kind of the old way of doing things. Because the kind of cool thing about good and bad is because it was so small and so insulated that a lot of outside influences didn't creep in. So you still kind of have like a lot of old school approach. Not saying that it's better or worse, but it's kind of like a little time capsule, right? Of how things were trained.
Okay.
And he was just a really good guy.
Yeah.
Right. He was just a fun guy to sit down and chat with.
It's very important. Very important to
if you don't have a good vibe with the teacher, right? No matter how good the style is, or this, that, and the other, or how famous or relevant it is, it's not really going to amount to much.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're not going to absorb as much, and the instructor's not going to give you as much if you don't have that connection. Yeah.
No, and and then also like you don't want to be hanging like. Would you hang out with a teacher who's kind of like unethical or immoral just because they have great technique?
Not anymore.
No.
I
don't think that's a good path to follow.
I don't learn under my father anymore. No, obviously I'm joking, of course. But yeah.
So you've been watching the new Star Wars Obi-Wan, right?
That's right.
Darth Vader references.
Yeah, I am. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but yeah, I just watched the last 3 episodes. It's not like I'm not.
Good.
It's not like I'm not a. I mean, I like Star Wars as much as the next fellow, but
yeah, but you're not a fanatic.
No, I'm not. So some of the references I don't get because I don't watch it, and but you know, yeah, I mean, I've watched them many times, but yeah, I think the 4th one comes out today. Actually, the 4th episode. So,
good.
So if you listen to
give
this,
it a shot.
If you listen to this episode, that's you know what's going on. But if this is 30 years' time and people are listening to this episode,
if I'm around in 30 years,
that's right. But yeah,
it's a small style. It's pretty closed, but they're not. What's the word I'm looking for? They're not secretive, right? They just don't do anything publicly. That's all. But if you showed up at their dojo and said, I'd like to practice, they'd be like, oh, come on in. Sure.
Yeah, unless it's Murakami's dojo.
Well, he was the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think there was kind of a wisdom in Murakami Sensei's approach, but that's one thing. But in terms of now, like if you went to the dojo in Beppu now, like with Ikeda Sensei, right? He's in charge now.
Yeah.
And you give him a call and said, could I come by and train? He'd be like, yeah, sure. Bring some water, bring the uniform. Come on out.
And they still teach Shorin Ryu and To'on Ryu?
So Murakami Sensei so his dojo taught Shorin Ryu.
Yeah.
And although his dojo said To'on Ryu, he never really taught it.
Yeah.
Right. And then To'on Ryu.
Oh, you mean sorry, Beppu. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, they just teach To'on. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I got my hand slapped quite a few times for being the Goju guy.
Oh yeah. Okay. So
I'm not willing to kind of give it up.
Well, what are some differences between Goju and To'on?
Fundamentally, the base is the same, right? It's quote Nahate, right? So it kind of emphasizes tight, in-close fighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Short strikes, okay, generating power from the core instead of like maybe more the whip-like movements of Shorin.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest distinguishing features that I found was its kicks. Its kicks are very peculiar. They're short, they're stomping kicks, right? Okay. And they rarely retract the leg. So for example, if you're doing like a sokuto, like a low sokuto getting like a side kick right to the front, they would ride the kick down. So they would extend the leg and then they would fall into the kick.
Yeah.
So I've seen others like Okinawa Kempo sometimes does this. You can see this in their older versions of Nisei Shi, right?
Yeah.
But To'on does this for almost every single kata.
Okay.
For every single kick.
Yeah,
which is really
makes sense.
But it makes sense.
Because when you're kicking, you're driving your weight into the kick. Like there's no coming back from that kick.
Yeah. So they just want to say, okay, it's more kind of a finish, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times they'll hang on to you, like a big philosophy is like, you kind of secure the opponent, you put their weight onto the target, and then you would kick and follow through. So you can hopefully damage something.
Yeah, right? And finish whatever the encounter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, sometimes they call it like keibanashi, right? So ke is from keri, right? Keri, to kick. The ba is just a change in the consonant. So it's, shu, ha, ri, right? The ha, shu, ha, the kind of separate, right?
Yep. So
in this case, not separating. Keiba nashi. So nashi means to not, right? So to kick and not separate from the opponent. So basically to kick and follow through.
Okay. What about their strikes?
The strikes are, for the most part,
retracted?
Yeah, like they're very typically Okinawan karate. The only big difference in the fundamentals is the chamber is at the waist, whereas Goju is typically up here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Shorin is, so it's more kind of a, I'm not going to say Shorin.
Yeah.
Not that anyone's going to listen, but yeah, they chamber more at the waist. No, I mean, as soon as anyone in Japan listening.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
Not get in trouble for that. So they chamber more at the waist.
Okay, all right.
And then blocking for, like for example, middle block, like in Goju, you have a tendency to go out and meet.
Yep, and hook in.
The punch, and then pull in. So they do it more like a Shorin kind of snap.
Okay, yep.
Right. So there's lots of little differences, and I think they really just kind of boil down to the idiosyncrasies of the founder, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the influences of that founder.
Yeah, in the sense, like they have their own personality, their temperament, their body type, which is going to influence how they prefer to use the techniques that they learned. That they learned, right? I mean, and Kyoto, in a similar way, he was a little bit smaller, right? A little bit lankier, right? So his techniques definitely have like a different flavor.
Yeah, and it's not to say that Shoji Miyagi didn't alter anything either. I'm sure he would have changed his.
It depends who you talk to. If it's Orthodox Goju and you talk to people like the teachers, they're going to say, no, it all came in one continuous line.
Yeah, look. No, yeah, I don't believe that at all, because, well, for starters, I've been around doing karate for 30 years. I can't remember what my dad told me 30 years ago. Like, I don't remember what it was 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, it
can't be.
If you took it from a statistical perspective, almost every single pre-war teacher had more than one instructor.
Yeah.
And so that would make Miyagi Chojun the single outlier.
Yeah.
It just doesn't add up.
Especially at that time in Okinawa and where karate was heading. Or where karate wasn't heading, it's probably better.
Exactly.
In that sort of time in Okinawa and Japan history. Changes had to come. And there's nothing wrong with adapting and innovating, because the karate that we do now, the movement now is so much better than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
I would hope that 100 years later we've made improvements in technique and sports science, nutrition, quality of life, you name it.
It's especially warm-up exercise. I know we've changed our warm-up as sports science is getting more and more available to everybody. You know more about how to look after your body, how to manage your knees, ankles, hips for karate.
Like there's the traditional warm-ups, and then they're a product of their time, and some of them, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but doesn't mean you can't revisit them and critique them and take a look and go, you know what, for some of my students, these are contraindicated. Like this guy has a bad knees or bad back, like you said. So I don't think they should be doing these. Yeah,
that's right. But back to the differences in Goju and To'on. Kata-wise, I mean, like without kata, kata is such a huge part of karate.
It's the elephant in the room. Yeah, it's the lifeblood and the bane of karate.
Without kata, I don't think karate I don't think karate is as relevant as it is without kata, Because
kata is the currency of karate.
Yeah. Currency, yeah, that's a good one.
It's literally the currency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's the cultural and social currency of karate. Right.
I have an episode coming called. Well, it's going to be around that. Is kata still useful?
I'm not going to open my mouth for that one.
Yeah. Anyway, but 100%. But without kata, I don't think we're sitting here talking, because there's so many things that you can explore in kata, and there's so many things to learn, and the different styles and different people.
Unfortunately, it's been overemphasized, in my opinion. I know we've had a correction in the last 20 years, but that's trying to basically correct 100 years of emphasizing kata.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I digress. Anyway, you wanted to talk about To'on kata.
That's cool. Yep.
So there's only 4 core kata, right? So Sanshin, Seisan, right? Sanseidu, and Pekjurin.
Yep.
Or Betjurin.
Yeah.
Sensei was never 100% sure if it was Betjurin or Petjurin.
As in the pronunciation, or?
Yeah, was it with a B or a P?
Okay. Yeah. But
it was never called Super-Impe. It was always called Betjurin or Petjurin. Right?
Betjurin is 100 continuous movements, right?
Yeah, so 100 linked or continuous movements, right?
Not 108.
That's Super-Impe.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then there's 2 adjunct kata. I shouldn't call them adjunct kata, but they're like non-Nahate. So there's Yabu no Jion, right?
Yep.
And Gokenki is Neipai.
Neipai, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's some adjunct kata that were made
specifically,
like some basic kata that were made in like the 60s and 70s.
Let me guess. So they're based on Kion. I mean, all
very very simple.
All kata is based on Kion, of course, but it was.
Yeah, so they have like Kiso 1, 2, 3, right?
Okay.
And then they have a couple of movement drills, and then one sort of, I don't even know if I can call it a kata. It's more like a drill, I guess, too. Skiuke. It's a blocking and punching drill. And then there's a stepping drill. And then there's makiwara, chishi, isashi, right? And then the single arm wooden man, kakiya.
Yep. Okay.
Which is pretty unique. Like I don't see that much anymore.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Okay. So you got the 4 core kata. What I like is Jion.
There's Yabu no Jion, right?
Yeah, such an odd kata to be in that. I can see Neipai maybe.
Yeah, I asked Sensei like why Neipai was in there, and he just guessed, and he just thought that it was sort of related to Higona's karate, and it kind of introduced more of a softer aspect to the other forms. But yeah, Jion is a bit okay. Why Jion?
Yeah.
So, and that just comes from Kyoto interacting at the teachers college with Yabu Kensu, right?
Yeah, okay.
But the question that's always kind of bugged me is he would have also been like in regular Okinawan school system with Itosu and those guys, right? Like when Itosu was teaching and Hanashiro and Yabu too. So why did he not adopt Naifanchi or the Pinan, right? So maybe I can understand maybe Naifanchi because they have Sanshin and that's kind of their sort of considered equivalent in terms of what they're training or like the base, the style. But I wonder why he didn't pick up It's just my own kind of thought experiment. Like, why didn't he pick up Pinan or something?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know.
Maybe it's too much kata.
Maybe it's too much kata, but then, you know, I remember I was having ramen one day with Kanzaki sensei, and he said, yeah, when Funakoshi was evacuated to Kyushu from Tokyo, and, you know, during the air raids, that him and Kyoda met, and Funakoshi proposed Kyoda teach him Pekjurin, and then he would teach Kyoda Kusanku.
Okay.
But it never happened because there wasn't enough time.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, so it shows me that Kyoda was open to learn new stuff, and it's obvious because he introduced, you know, Neipai and Jion.
Well,
and he was sort of open to learning Kusanku. So I wonder why he never introduced the other forms.
If it was a Pinan kata, maybe because I don't teach Pinan, and there's a lot of episodes about that, but maybe he couldn't see the sense in creating kata for school children for him to adopt it into his system.
Yeah, he was only really teaching his son, I guess, at that time. So he's like, what's the point? Maybe, who knows? Anyway, it's just, you know, you think about weird stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I think that's a big reason why you know we're still active in karate. No, I'm not in research at all. I just read your books. But
well, thank you for that.
And your new blog as well.
Oh, sorry. That's another increase of one reader. That's great. Oh, anyway, we got on a tangent. We were talking about kata and Kyoda, and I pull off on a tangent about how him, you know, why didn't he adopt these other forms?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then there's this weird stuff, right? There's weird stuff in To'on. Like they also do Tsukenshitaku no sai and Chatanyara no sai.
Yeah.
And then they also do this drives me, you can edit this out if you want, but this drives me bonkers. They say it's Soishi no kon. It's not Soishi no kon, it's Seisoko no kon, right?
Yeah, okay.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
So but anyway, neither here nor there. And I asked Kanzaki sensei about it. And I said, well, where do these kata come from? Who taught Kyoda? And he didn't know. He never asked.
Okay.
So,
do you know, was it Kyoda who actually brought those kata in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He knew for a fact that they came from Kyoda.
Okay.
The trouble was that I said, well, this would be really interesting for me just from a historical perspective. Like, if they came from Higaonna, that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
That would tell me something about Higaonna. But he did not know.
Okay.
You're never going to find out, right?
Do you ever get any blowback or any pushback or anything from the other guys in To'on Ryu?
Regarding my research I do? Yeah.
And you know
biggest. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and the different the cut and the names of Soishi no kon and.
No, I just kind of chuckle when they call it Soishi no kon. I go, you guys, I just say out loud, you guys know it's not Soishi no kon, it's Seisoko no kon. They're like, no, it's Soishi. I'm like, no, not so much. Do I get blowback? The only blowback I ever got was when I first came back to Canada, I was teaching Goju and To'on in tandem. And that was not really appreciated too much.
Okay.
Yeah, I got my knuckles wrapped pretty good for that.
What about now? What do you at your dojo?
You don't have to edit this out. I don't care.
Okay.
I'm so sick of karate politics and the nonsense at my age. So when I teach To'on, I say, this is To'on, you're going to do To'on mechanics, right? We're not going to be messing anything up here, right? So we're doing To'on, period, in the discussion. I don't want to see anything else creep in. But in this day and age, with the wealth of information, and you're teaching adult students and you're going to tell them what they can or can't learn, I just don't really see that as like a mature way to teach or present information.
Yeah.
Right. So now I occasionally get comments like, oh, this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, okay. I told you what I'm doing. So the issue is yours now. So if you have an issue with it, then that's your problem, not mine. But I've told you what I'm doing. I'm being transparent.
So do you have two separate syllabus, or is it?
So when I first came back, I did start teaching To'on, but I found it really hard for beginners. Really, really tough.
Beginners,
not to say that Goju, like raw beginners, who don't know anything.
Yeah.
And not to say that Goju isn't difficult, but I found it was easier to teach them Goju first for a while. And then if they stuck it out, like to, EQ or Shodan, then that was a good starting point to say, okay, now we're going to transition and we're going to look at another aspect of Nahate, and we're going to learn some To'on, right? And you can compare and contrast. And that was a pretty good approach, right? Trouble is, karate's got a high turnover rate, so it was pretty hard to get even someone to kind of just do the fundamentals. So yeah, and then eventually I just got so frustrated at myself mostly, and just went, I'm done. I don't want to teach this anymore. It's not my responsibility, and nor should I have ever thought that, right? To'on will always survive as a style. There's always going to be a few people doing it.
Yeah,
they're just fine without me.
Yeah. So you're not teaching To'on Ryu any longer, or?
I teach a couple of people.
Okay.
So I do teach a couple of people that have been doing it for a couple of years.
And what about your own training?
Yeah, my own training is To'on and Kobudo. Okay. Yeah, I don't stop. Yeah, wake up, To'on Sunshine.
What Kobudo are you on the roof of your house?
Pardon?
On the roof of your house?
No, it's summertime, the balcony. I always joke with my students, say the first thing you should do is get up, make a nice cup of coffee that you're really going to enjoy and savor. Okay, put it on the kitchen table, take 10 steps back, and then do sunshin till you get to your coffee.
That's good.
Then you can savor the first sip. And you're doing a little bit of training.
I might start doing that with my guys for my fancy. Put it in the middle.
And you can have the reach for the coffee move.
Walk to the left, walk to the right, and then when you finish it,
you can have your coffee.
It won't be too hot. It'll be perfect temperature.
It'll just be perfect.
Yeah.
And then I do Kobudo. So I do since it's Kobudo via the Pyra lineage.
Yeah. Okay. But I still
teach that. I teach that a couple times a week.
Okay. So there's an interesting mix of karate and Kobudo.
Yeah, I just that seems to be. It seems that what makes me happy right now. Ask me in 6 months, maybe I'll change my mind.
Yeah.
But I'm always open to teaching To'on. I just don't think I'm the best practitioner of it. It's just there's so few of us, right?
Yeah.
So there's me. I think Pavel. He's a Russian guy who started learning under Ikeda Sensei, and then Rich. He's an American guy who's studying under Ikeda Sensei too. And then I can't mention his name, but there's a Welsh guy who learned under Yoshino Sensei when he was living in Japan. So I'm good friends with him. So he's probably the only guy I can have a really good conversation with about To'on Ryu, because he's the only other guy who's really learned it.
Do you need subtitles when you're talking to him, or nah?
He's not like Joe, he's Welsh. You don't need subtitles.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you do sometimes.
Well, the Welsh accent, yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
So
it's a bit tricky.
I'm not going to get hate mail from Welsh people. I apologize.
That's all right, mate. They can't read or write.
Oh gosh. That's kind of what I kind of do right now. So, but if you they have a Facebook page, the Hombu Dojo has a Facebook page. They have a website, that has a link to the email of Ikeda Sensei. So if you wanted to go and train and you're inclined, you could just email them and say, I'm going to be in Japan. Can I come and train? And they'll go, yeah, okay, come and train.
So it's not like they're being secretive or enclosed.
No, they just don't advertise.
Small.
They got their website, they're small, they just don't do anything public. But if you showed up, like emailed them and said, "Hey, can I come and train?" Like they'd be like, "Oh yeah, sure, come on down." They're really a good group of guys.
Okay. So. And it's just like every karate style, it's somebody's interpretation of what they learned. Right.
Yeah. So, now you've got like Kanzaki sensei taught Ikeda sensei, right? Because we were both students at the same time, and Ikeda sensei is my dai senpai, right? My senior. So he's going to interpret To'on Ryu through his lenses, right? How he sees it. And he's very skilled. He's quite good.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you'd pick up a lot. And, me too. I go and it's just good. Like this is just across the board, regardless of what style you do and no matter what your level is, right? It's always good for someone to critique you, right? Because you can't critique yourself. You can go, yeah, it looks good, right? Even golf, even like world-class golfers, like, Tiger Woods will go to a golf pro, even though the golf pro is not as good.
Yeah.
Like because someone externally can critique their technique and say, okay, your swing could maybe do this, right?
Yeah.
And then more of on a more personal level, like, if you don't critique yourself and you don't critique your style, the style is going to become, stagnant.
Yeah.
And then also a big thing is it just falls into self-serving hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And how many times have we seen that in karate styles and karate dojo, right?
Mate, there's no egos in karate.
Exactly.
There's no politics. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I clearly don't know. I'll take there. I can't see the politics now. I took my glasses off.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, what have you noticed different from when you first started in '85 until now?
You mean in terms of training or attitude or just in general?
Just in general.
Well, we sort of alluded to this earlier, like when I started, and I think maybe when you started too, like it was the real emphasis on 3K karate, right? Yeah, Kihon Kumite, right? And kata.
Yeah.
And then within the last, let's say 15 years, there's been kind of a revolution to make your karate functional and to make all three of those elements more integrated. Like that's probably the biggest change on kind of like on a technical level or like on terms of like teaching or pedagogy. I think that's the biggest one. And that's a good thing. I do think sometimes the pendulum has swung a little too far, but I think it's kind of correcting and coming back.
You mean the emphasis on bunkai?
The overemphasis on...
the overemphasis,
The overemphasis on your karate having to be, this is maybe going to come out wrong, but everything has to be practical and usable and for self-defense, right? And that's kind of missing part of the process and the meaning of what karate is about.
Yeah, sometimes a block is just a block.
Yeah, and then also you're kind of missing on the kind of like the philosophical aspect, because we always kind of chop it off, but it is karate do, right? It's like judo, kendo, jukendo, right? That philosophical path that we kind of do the introspection and kind of walking.
Yeah.
So you don't want to kind of chuck that out. And I think people can become a little bit too myopic in their pursuit of functionality.
Yeah, I really I don't like the term functional karate or practical karate.
Practical karate, I don't like.
It's huge, that is just what karate is.
I agree.
It's like saying karate. It's not.
And I would say the other thing that I've noticed very much so in the last also 15 years is the increasing karate tourism, especially to Okinawa.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Karate Over Coffee. And if you're enjoying the podcast and getting something out of the episodes, there are a few things you can do to help us. If you don't already subscribe to us on YouTube, please do so. We release these episodes every Friday morning, Australian time. Plus, we release some smaller espresso shots during the week on both our YouTube channel and our Facebook community group. You can also subscribe to us on our Apple or Spotify, leaving a 5-star review will be very beneficial as well. If you have any suggestions or topics or feedback or anything that you want to talk about, please put it in our comment section on our Karate Over Coffee community Facebook group. If you'd like to support us, please visit our online shop where we have official Karate Over Coffee shirts, hoodies and mugs available. Your continued support is appreciated and a vital way for the podcast to keep moving forward. Thanks, guys.